Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Business Horizon sessions that we are running on behalf of the UK Space Agency as part of the Accelerator programme. This one is the second in an 8-part series, and we're going to be looking at innovative business models today, which leads nicely on from Thinking Differently, which we were exploring last week. Now, I know that you are all around the world, registrations from all around the world, so thank you for joining us, whether it's morning, noon, night, wherever you are. I hope you get something from today. Make sure you are interacting, and there's a few ways you can interact with us. So firstly, you may see down at the bottom of your screen, there are a few QR codes. Please do use your phone. This is probably the only live event that will get you to use your phone. So please use your phone, scan the QR codes at the bottom and join the conversation as we go. One of the other ways you can get involved and ask questions of the panel as we go through it, and me and yourself, is on Slido. So there's a couple of ways to do that. First off, you can go to a web browser and get to slido.com and enter the event code E109. Or scan the QR code that's on the screen right now, and that should take you right there. Get chatting away. There will be a poll later on as well that we'll come to. So if you do have a question of the panel or a question for the entrepreneur, who we have on a bit later on, then please do ask away on Slido. You are able to watch it again. So if you missed last week's, there is a link. We'll put that public so you can go and watch that. And the link today as well, we'll put that one public. If you have a key learn from today or a key takeaway, please put it on social, get the conversation going out there, and make sure to tag us at eSpark Global, and that's on a number of different platforms. Quick learn from last week, and thank you very much for your feedback. The questions that we had on Slido, we answered in blog format, so we weren't able to get all of those answers to all of the questions that you put down there. So we did it in a blog format, which will be live on our website as soon as we, well, most likely tomorrow. But if you put a question up there and it's not asked and it's not answered, then please let me direct you to the blog that we post. We do endeavour to make sure we answer all of those questions, so please get to the website and have a look at that. Without further ado, let's get on to today's topic, because it's one that is really relevant. We've been doing a series of interviews recently on for the entrepreneurs joining the other side of this program, which is the Leo program, and it is so clear, and from the interviews that we've been doing and people that we've worked with, we have so many great technical people, scientists, researchers, all searching for that business model, how to turn their great idea into a business model and make some money out of it. So that's what we're going to focus in on today. We're going to talk about what is a business model. We're going to show a video which is going to walk you through some common business model types. And I want you to be thinking about, as you go through that video, how can you apply some of the learns straight into your business? What are the questions you need to be asking yourselves? And think about the little parts of your business model as it becomes more apparent that you could probably flex and change as we go. So the key outcomes for today are, we want you to understand what we mean and what we're talking about business models. We're going to explore some, decide, well, hopefully come to some conclusions on which one might suit you, or which parts of each you can pull on to bring together, and discover how you can really flex and change your business model towards what we're talking about, innovation. We're going to look at the definition of innovation as well, because I think it's really important, especially when kind of crossing the traversing between the technical founder and business person. So without further ado, I will very quickly just introduce you to, we're going to have some live guests. We'll come on to those. But the live guests that we've got coming up are Joe Trodden, who's CEO of Mindset Experts. We've got Mike Stevens, CEO of Entrepreneurial Spark. And we've got Roni Das, who is an entrepreneur who we're going to be applying the learns live straight into her business a bit later on. But without further ado, I want you to play you the video module. Sit back, watch the video. write down some thoughts, get some learns, some key actions, and think about innovative business models in a different way. Here we go. Hi, and welcome to this video module on innovative business models. Now, much has been made for the potential of technological innovation to create positive disruption in the business world. But the outstanding successes of the last decade have been driven by disruptive business models, not just new technology. Look at the likes of Uber, the largest taxi company in the world, but they don't own any taxis. Or Airbnb, the largest property rental company, but they don't have any property. Changing the perception of the word innovation could also help us. Typically, when we think of innovation, we think of that new technological advance or that shiny new piece of equipment. Today, we explore the true meaning of innovation and how you only have to change small parts of what you do to be truly innovative. In this module, we share different business models with you, real life examples, and give you ideas of when to use them and common pitfalls to look out for. As we go through this module, try applying the lens of possibility to your business and see what building blocks you would have to flex or change to fit the model. So let's go ahead and understand the term business model before we really delve into how you can play with yours. A common definition of a business model is usually seen as the way you make money, but it's way more than that. There are many different building blocks which come together to form what we call a business model. These component parts consist of things like your customer segment, the channels in which you communicate with your customers, the relationship you have with your customer, and even the value you propose to deliver to the customer. Those angles are what we call the desirability of your business. We can look at the key aspects as well, like partnerships, resources, infrastructure, to make sure we're focusing on the feasibility of your business. Finally, there is the cost structure and the revenue streams, which underpin the whole business. This gives you an indicator of the viability of what you're doing. A true definition of a business model is when all aspects of desirability, feasibility, and viability come together and work simultaneously to deliver true value to a customer. When you flex even smaller components of those three angles, or your business model, you can change the way you do business in a really radical way. Let's explore some common business model types and see how they could affect the way you innovate. Here's Mike and Faye to take us through a few.
Some good examples of freemium business models are Candy Crush and LinkedIn. So these are things where you get to use the thing for free, you get all the functions, the basic functions that you need, and you have to pay for the premium stuff on top of that, for the really cool functions of whatever it is you're using. The benefits of this are that because it's free, there are very low barriers to adoption. So you can grow a user base really, really quickly just by putting loads and loads of people in the top of the funnel. So it's great for testing things out and for growing rapidly the number of people that are using your thing, whatever that happens to be. The challenges come, there's two key challenges really with freemium models. The first is that because it's easy to sign up to, people may do it just to sort of experiment and see what it is and then drop off again. So there tends to be quite a high attrition rate of free users. And that's a challenge because you're having to pay for this. You're having to pay to deliver the service to all of these free people who aren't paying you anything. The second challenge is in getting the conversion right to paid users. So generally you've got to invest quite a lot just to build the thing to allow free people onto it without even knowing whether anyone will pay for it yet. So it can be quite risky to know what to put behind the paywall, how much to charge, and whether anyone will even go for it or not. So that's the freemium business model. It can be great for fast growth, but just be careful about making sure that you really understand what people are looking for and are willing to pay for.
So let's have a look at multi-sided platform business models. The thing about this business model is you're not actually buying or selling anything, but what you are doing is providing a platform where you bring essentially buyers and sellers together, a bit of a melting pot for them to come together. You provide the platform. Now, if you're considering this as a business model, there's some great benefits in terms of the potential for you to scale and scale quickly. If you get the value proposition and the infrastructure right, the sky can be the limit. And we've seen some great examples over recent years of businesses like Uber, Airbnb, and eBay. And if we're thinking a bit further down, a great pioneer of this business model is Metro newspaper, who obviously relied on readers and advertisers and brought them together to make their business a success. So what do you need to consider then if you're thinking about this? Well, you need to create value simultaneously. So your buyer and your seller need to both have a great experience. And if you're creating a platform, you might need to have quite a large cash injection to allow this to happen. Because without those great experiences, if one of your customer segments drops off, you haven't got a sustainable business model.
An open business model is one in which you create the building blocks for something and you enable people from outside the business to come and use those building blocks to create new stuff. And in fact, create new building blocks themselves and contribute in other ways. So some good examples are, if you're a software developer, then the Linux kernel, but in lots of other good examples as well, like Wikipedia and even Cards Against Humanity has an open part to their business model. What's great about open is that the smartest people on the planet are crowds, far smarter than any individual. So the breadth of ideas and skills and influences that an open business model opens up is bottomless. It's incredible. The challenge is finding a way to make money out of it. So if you are offering things for free to make them accessible, then how do you generate revenue? The Linux Foundation is funded by sponsorship, as is Wikipedia, and Cards Against Humanity have a sell the main pack in order to fund the open business model. So it can be difficult to find a way to make money in its own right in a scalable way, but it works really well if you tag it on to another business model. If you can find a way to make it work, then the opportunities and the possibilities that it opens up make the potential of an open business model limitless.
A great definition of a subscription business model is where you agree to provide an ongoing business product or service in return for regular payments. Think Amazon Prime, think Netflix, think Graze, the snack box company. There's some clear benefits for this type of business model. You have a good oversight of your future income, and you've also got a really good opportunity to build sustained relationships with your customer base. And that allows you opportunities to upsell further products or services to them, but also to gain insight on what they like or don't like about your product or service and make sure that you can make the improvements needed to retain your customers. It can also be an easy way to attract customers quickly because you're only asking for a small outlay rather than a large upfront outlay. So that barrier to customers coming on board is significantly reduced. There's some key challenges though as well, particularly around retention. So the cost to acquire a customer is normally more than the first few payments that you'll receive from them. So retaining them is key if you want to see that return on investment. Other things to consider then, unit economics is really important in a subscription business model. Because the values are small and prices are fixed, they can be particularly hard to change, and minor cost changes can have quite a significant impact on profitability of the business.
There are some great and really famous examples of bait and hook business models. The classic one is razor blades. So you buy your razor up front, and it's not too expensive, but where the company makes money is on selling you the blades that can only fit with that razor. So you have to keep buying the blades for them. So the bait is the cheap razor, and the hook that ties you in over the long term is that you have to buy the razor blades. The great thing about this business model is that you get a recurring source of revenue. So once you've sold that first product, then you know that people will have to buy the associated razor blades or coffee pods or whatever it is. The challenge is that increasingly there are new entrants in the market, new startups looking to disrupt bait and hook business models. So if you look at what happened with Dollar Shave Club and all of the razor blade subscriptions that followed after that, it's disrupted the bait and hook razor blade industry that existed until now. And that's happening in other places as well. So it can be an easy one to disrupt, and if you're reliant on a lucrative revenue stream from ongoing business, then it can expose you to risk.
So you've just heard from Mike and Faye on some common business model types, how they're used, and some pitfalls to look out for. A question for you. Did you fall into your business model, or did you choose it? What is it that you need to flex to deliver more value to your customer? And if you're in search of business model innovation, what are those little experiments that you need to run now? Those little component parts of the whole of that value chain, be it a customer segment, the way you deliver value, a channel, a relationship that you have to have with your customer. What are the little experiments that you need to put around by changing one of those tiny things to reach real business model innovation? It's over to you. And we can't wait to hear how your experiments are coming on and how you are innovating. Fantastic. Yeah, some really interesting thoughts going on in the videos, and a few challenges for you as well. So what are you going to do? What are those little experiments that you're going to get hold of to flex your business model, to find out what's right for you? How can you add more value to your customer? But also exploring who is your customer. And we'll probably come on to that a little bit more as we go. Just want to come back to the beginning of that video where we talked about innovation, because that common thought about innovation is that it has to be something big, shiny, a huge step change, but it really doesn't. It really doesn't. It's an iterative process. Small changes can really radically change everything that you do. So think about what it is that you want to change to flex your business model to reach innovation. Okay. We're going to bring in a couple of experts now who have worked with businesses, many businesses on flexing their business model and finding out how they can find the value that they're providing to customers. So the first person we're actually going to bring in is Joe Trodden. Now, Joe Trodden is the CEO of Mindset Experts, and he works in the space of that first growth inflection point, kind of 500K to 1 million, with teams circa 10 people to help develop the strategic roadmap and team dynamics. Joe, I'm going to bring you in, and if you wouldn't mind just giving us a quick intro to you, and also tell us why you're in a castle.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Jeremy. So I'm Joe Trodden. I work with growth entrepreneurs at what I call their first inflection point. So this is typically, they have had the idea, they've started to get this traction. The team's usually about 10, 500K to 1 million turnover. And then there's quite a lot of changes that take place in the business. And interestingly enough, those are the points where your business model really is coming into focus. You know, is this a scalable business model? Is it the right business model? Because it started to get closer to the customers and really understand where the value is coming from. I think it's very important, actually, like you'd mentioned, that you are looking at the model as much as just the iteration on a product. And I'm in a castle because I move around Edinburgh quite a lot, and I like experiencing new places. And I just happened to move into somewhere that's decorated like the court of Louis XIV. It's the first time I've owned. I've been in a place with my own tapestry. Let's put it that way. But I love it. I love it.
Thanks, Joe. I'm also going to bring in Mike Stevens, who's the CEO of Entrepreneurial Spark now. In a previous guise, he was very much working directly with entrepreneurs. Now we're very much supporting businesses to grow, to scale, to think, to act differently. And it's all fundamentally down to helping people find their business model and change it. Mike, quick intro, if you could.
Yeah, hi everybody. Jeremy, I think you've done most of the intro for me, but yes, I'm the CEO of Entrepreneurial Spark. I've been working in and around different business models for the last 10 or 15 years, and I love a business model discussion. Partly down to people don't often realize the importance of focusing on this. So over half of the most successful growth companies over the last decade have come not because of a new piece of tech or an evolution in the market, it's because of business model innovation. So this is right at the crux of what makes people successful and grow when in any sector.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Mike. And just a quick one to everybody out there. Please start getting your questions to these guys on Slido. We'll be coming over to your questions to kind of drive this conversation. So please do get to slido.com if you're not already on it. Put in that code E109 or simply just scan that barcode and we shall see you in conversation. Okay, I actually want to come to Joe first. Where have you seen like a great innovation in business models? Have you got a great example of somebody doing it really well?
Well, you know, when you mentioned this to me, like one of my favorite ones is when I heard what Philips were doing with I think it's pronounced Schiphol airport in Holland. And it's a really good example of turning a product into a service. So they needed lighting at this airport terminal. And it's a massive capital outlay. There's going to be, you know, it's this complex install. I don't really know much about lighting. You know, the project manager's thinking they're just going to convince me on some sales session. But what Philips did instead was to say, okay, we'll provide light as a service rather than a product. And it was a really cool approach because what happened then was they get charged for the light that is provided, but it meant that there was no massive upfront cost. So they took that out. It also meant that Philips then have an incentive to put in high quality, low maintenance, easy to access, easy to repair, because they're the ones that are responsible for it. Mm-hmm. And another interesting element of that was that they both shared this desire to do something in the circular economy. So if Philips are responsible for that, they want to minimize waste, because now the model's flipped to say, well, the waste is your problem, you know, provider of the service, rather than the end customer. So you're not going to put in like the cheapest fittings, and you're not going to make this hard to manage and maintain. And I just thought it was like a genius move. So and it's exactly this thing about changing the business model. You know, you're still going to have the same end product, like light in this terminal. But what you do is you look at the whole thing and say, what do they not like? Huge upfront costs. How do we manage that? What do they not like? Dealing with the sales process. How do we take that out? Like just looking at the whole process and saying, how do you flip it on its head? And finding something in common with your customer, like that whole circular economy, the desire to do something positive there. It was just a really clever way to do that.
Yeah. And it's interesting, you're really focusing in on the customer. It's not about shiny innovation. It's not about, you know, that big thing, that big product change. It's do I really, really understand my customer enough to make choices in my business which help to create value for them? What are they doing now? Where are they? You know, who are they interacting with? Where do they hang out? And gathering so much insight to go, this is the slight change that we're going to make to the business model. Yeah, really interesting, Joe.
Sure, the product was exactly the same, but it's the way that it was delivered in that model. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Mike, I just want to come to you because there's probably a number of businesses who are operating in the space sector here thinking, yeah, but I'm a space business. I can't have a subscription model, or I can't do this. How is business model innovation kind of relevant for them?
Yeah, I think particularly in the space sector, where there's a lot of focus on the technology development side of things, because there's so much exciting stuff going on, knowledge coming out of universities, out of R&D in large organizations. There's lots of exciting evolutions. But all of those technologies need a business model in order to do anything, to have any impact on the world. You can put satellites in space, you can build rockets, but until those things have an effective business model, then people aren't going to be able to get the benefit of them. And I think in space, where you've got lots of grant funding, you've got lots of sort of early stage R&D happening, people can lose sight of the need to build a business model until a lot further down the line. So you can get quite far and suddenly realize that you've got no idea how to commercialize this properly. So I think for the space sector especially, the key is to start really early on who are the customers, what are the value in this, what's the problem that I'm trying to solve, and building the business model and the technology all around that.
Yeah, because it's easy to just go down the route of one thing, isn't it? And lose sight of building what is going to actually create value for your customer. And that's an important term. We kind of just throw value out there all the time, but we talk about delivering value, Joe, to our customers and trying to find out our place in the value chain. What does that even mean? And what does it mean for a business entering the space sector?
Ultimately, it is about really understanding your customer's whole journey and thinking about the sector, your industry, and what's going on across all of that. I mean, there was an example, I'm pretty sure it was IBM. There was an example where they were in the disk drive industry, and then all these other players are catching them up, and it's becoming highly sort of commercialized commodity thing. So IBM have a choice then to go, well, we can compete with that and try and knock all of our costs down, which they were never going to be able to do. Or we focus on where can we actually provide the value that others can't. So then they ended up focusing on really high-end, sort of the disk reading element, like one component. And then the customer switched from being to the mass market, the end user, to the people who were making these disks, because they couldn't make that component. And eventually they would catch up and IBM would have another choice to make, But the point being that they had IBM's key core capabilities were around this sort of this high-end thing. That we've got genius high-level technologists. So where does that operate in that value chain?
Yeah.
I'll give you another quick example is that often scale gets associated with going online. That you can't really scale unless you go online, you should mass market. I work with a travel company for disabled travelers, and their business model was very high touch. And they would constantly get put on about, oh, you should make that an Expedia thing and it'll go low cost. But that wasn't what their customers wanted. So there is, if you look at that market segment, there is a segment that would go online and would want things at the cheapest point. But there's a segment in the middle who want the high touch. We'll take care of everything. It's not like an EasyJet scenario where you can hang on the phone for 8 hours to speak to somebody. It was like, this is a customer segment that wants a particular type of value. And it's really understanding, like, where is that customer and how do you play in that particular space rather than like trying to serve everybody with everything. Or because we can do something, we should do it. It's really what you say no to as well.
Yeah. Interesting. Go on, Mike. Yeah.
I was just going to say, and that's where the really exciting stuff happens with business models, where everyone thinks you've got an obvious answer. Well, obviously, you should just make this into an Expedia thing and make it low cost. And actually, you go and find the thing that isn't obvious to everyone else, but something that customers are really sort of after and hungering for. And you do that, and that's where the really good stuff starts to happen.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I want to come to that point you made fairly early on. You've got all this great stuff going on within your business, but actually all a customer wants is that one thing. And that's what we call, certainly in the lean startup movement, is a zoom in pivot. You've got all this stuff that's adding value, but you zoom in on one component part, which is adding the most value and going down that route. And that changes the way you do business. It doesn't stop you doing what you're doing. It just changes the way you do it. So yeah, it's something I'm really fascinated in as well. There's a question just come in from David Molyneux, actually, and please, I encourage you to get on Slido and ask some more questions, because this one's an interesting one. I'm going to come to you. So they're making a freemium game, okay, and building in change adaptation and mind agility to the game. Aligned with UCI, how do we promote this to investors? We need to get in the mind of the investors, or how do we tell people what the value is in this?
So I'll grab this one first, Joe, if that's all right. So there's a couple of things here for me. The first one is that part of the reason that we're talking about business models is that any funder that you're talking to is going to be interested in your business model. You need to be able to describe it, talk about all the component parts and what drives it to succeed. So that's whether it's investors. Innovate UK, you're interested in how you're going to commercialize an idea. Banks, grant funders, everyone is interested in your business model, which is why it's so central. From the point of view of this one, we are going to be running an investor readiness business horizon session in a few weeks, where we're going to dive into some of these topics in a lot more detail. But going back to what I said about freemium business models in the video, the key here is to show that your investors that you've really understood the pain point in your customers and the problem that you're trying to solve, and do whatever you can do to prove that they will pay to convert from free users into premium users. The more evidence that you can build around that before you've actually proven it in practice, the more likely an investor is going to be able to part with their money for you.
Yeah.
Two quick points for me is I would consider, are you asking investors to back a game or a company? And really think about how you're positioning that to say, we've got, investors will want to back the company, right? So you'll be talking about, here's where we're going with the first thing, and here's what that learning journey looks like. Here's why we think this product will be a success. But bear in mind that you're asking them to back a company, I would imagine, and certainly that would be more attractive. The other thing I would say is just consider why you're going freemium. Is it just because everybody else is doing it? Is there a customer segment that you could reach very quickly and commercialize faster? Because to an investor, that's likely to be even more attractive to say that we can reach a particular group with this product that we can commercialize really quickly with, rather than, as Mike said, you can get 10,000 freemium users, but it doesn't prove that you'll be able to commercialize, because the people who like free stuff, and they can easily just move on to the next thing. So think about who is the person that is likely to pay for that, and is there a way to commercialize faster to that audience?
Yeah, definitely. And there's a life cycle of a customer as well. I mean, certainly looking at Roger's adoption curve, shiny innovators, people who love the shiny new thing, that they'll always be your customer if you've got something out new to market. But how can you really warm up the early and late majority to take to get the numbers across the line to really build a great business model? Yeah, for sure. I just want to correct myself as well. I said UCI, it's UCL, University College London, of course. My apologies. If there are any more questions coming in, please put them onto the Slido chat, get the Q&A going. But I want to come to you, Joe, actually, because I am really interested in what you've seen. So what can be the downfall of some people when searching for a business model? Where do people come unstuck?
They settle too soon. And they do think about it being, this is the way that the industry works. And look, it may well be. But, like I say, I use that scaling option. The subscription, just really understand how you're going to reach that audience. And when you go B2C, your exposure, getting the exposure is something that you've got to really factor into your costs, into your business model. Because you can have an amazing product, but think about all the products out there that you are not buying that could potentially be solving your problems. I mean, it's the whole familiarity thing. So people can get unstuck by underestimating what the buying decision, the factors that are actually involved in that buying decision. And again, if we use that example from the start about Philips in the airport, yes, they wanted the light, but then you've got the problem of, we don't want this big upfront cost. So like just understand what the buying decisions are, and you've got more chance of finding a business model that will actually work.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people out there who are just holding on to everything they own for dear life. They're, you know, how can you quickly move through kind of a business model cycle to find out if this is something worth exploring?
Well, look, can I just tell you straight what I see there?
Yeah.
Look, there are so many amazing inventions and inventors that I've seen, and for me, that is a particular mindset. Whether I would say that's an entrepreneurial mindset, it just depends on your definition, right? But one of the challenges that I see is that they will hold on to the idea for way too long and like NDA the life out of it and patent this and patent that. And that really just slows you down. And then you get to market and actually find out, see that patent that we spent so much money on, it's actually not that relevant because now we'll have to change it. And actually, can we even defend that if you know, Dyson was to come in and do something or whatever? Really just get talking to people early on. They don't want to know all of the tech stuff, you know, that's behind it. They don't need to know all of the stuff that is, you know, potentially NDA patent content. But you've got to get the conversations. You know, I had a conversation with somebody. How can I help you? Well, I can't tell you anything about the idea. Okay, this is going to be a short conversation then. Or like you need to sign an NDA, which I can't do because, you know, I speak to so many people, you know. So I'd be wary of patenting too soon and trying to get people to sign NDAs, and just like build a team. Like, see if you are an inventor. I'm not saying it's impossible, but you will move faster if you put the right people around you and lean into your networks and use their expertise. So don't stay in the shed too long. That's what I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mike, finally to you, why are partnerships so important when searching for your business model?
Well, I come at it from two angles, I suppose. From similar to Joe, the opportunities that partnerships give you in terms of the knowledge and expertise, and just balancing out some of the things that you're not so good at as an entrepreneur. Whether you've got a team of a couple of people or you're just on your own at the moment, there's going to be some things that really sap your energy and will hold back your progress. And so it's better just to reach out for help and to work with people who can help you make progress on that journey. But I think also there's a big resource element to this. If you look at the sort of feasibility element of your business model, then holding all of the resource in-house is a very intensive way of building a business. You can do it. Some people do that really well, and they integrate all the different verticals and kind of keep everything themselves. But reaching outside the business and having the skill to form collaborative partnerships that provide value to both sides is another thing which is going to really propel your growth.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, gents. I'm now going to bring in. I will actually bring you back in very shortly, but I want to bring in Roni Das, who's the entrepreneur that we're going to be focusing in on, and just get her reflections on what she's just watched in terms of the video. And I want to find out what kind of questions she's asking herself now for her business journey. So, Roni, thank you so much for joining us. If you wouldn't mind giving us a quick intro to you, and I know that you're an entrepreneur. But what are you focusing in on?
I'm focusing in on bringing people who wouldn't normally engage with space into interacting with it. So my proposed business model is to aim at people who perceive space to be something that's unattainable. It's for people who are graduates or people who work within the industry. And what I'm trying to do at the moment is create a platform for those people to interact. So it's going to be a website where people can come in, and there's going to be a story and some visuals, and the story and the visuals are based on technology that's currently in the space agencies at the moment, but I've spun it into a fictional. There's a fictional spin on it, so I've developed some characters. So hopefully, people who would interact with it could identify with some of the characters, go with them, and sort of explore areas that they wouldn't normally, be involved with. I come from a design background. I studied design in the mid-80s, and then illustration and fashion in the mid-90s.
Let's just focus in a little bit, because that's really interesting. So you come from a completely a different background to the space sector. So after what you've just watched, certainly from the video module, and what you've just heard from Mike and Joe, have you now got some key questions that you're asking yourself about the direction or the key experiments that you want to run in your business to find the right business model?
I have. The subscription I find very, very interesting. Positioning yourself as in, is it one element or is it a company? So I've already identified that I want to be a company. I thought that was very valuable information as well, insights. And with regards to the business models, I think to cater for your customer, that was something I took from the conversations as well. So it's not so much about the idea that you have, it's about who you're going to sell the idea to. Are you going to be giving a service? And what I want to do is give a service. So even though I don't come from a space discipline, I've been interested in space for many, many years and read lots of things about it, and I interact in it on social media. And there must be lots and lots of people who aren't STEM, who aren't involved in STEM, who feel the same way, or who could potentially be involved in STEM and work in the space industry as a career. So I want to aim at those as well. And the things that I took from the conversations was knowing what kind of company you are, getting your idea out there and not keeping it to yourself, and catering for your customer, and knowing that something that you've come up with, that you've developed, how that could work with your potential customer, how it could help them, and then building a model around that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because what you're talking about is also the fact that you've got lots of different types of customer, and the value that you propose to deliver to each of those different customer segments could look completely different. So you may have to have a different relationship with them. You may have to communicate them through a different channel. So just being able to ask yourself those key questions around those segments is really important. Roni, thank you. I am going to just bring Mike and Joe back in, just to get their reflections on what they've just heard from you, and also maybe ask you a couple of questions themselves. All right, Joe, Mike, if we could bring you guys back in, that'd be great. So we can bring the conversation. From what you've just heard, any reflections on the way Roni's going about looking or questioning about her business model, and what you can point her to in order to find out what the right business model is for her?
Yeah, I think I caught most of that. There was a bit of feedback off the speakers there, I think, but I think I caught most of that. So, Roni, I think it's great that you have gone straight to the focus on your customers and what value they might be looking for. I think in this sense, when you're looking at something which is reaching out to different places in different sectors and trying to bring them in, you need to be really focused on who those group of people are. So who's the exact bunch that you're looking to connect with first? Because the challenge is you could try and reach everybody and end up reaching nobody really well. Yeah. So where you've got something that has got a really grand vision and a big brief like this, you've got to be laser focused on who's the first group that you want to test this with, and then be able to expand out, I think.
Okay, that's really good advice.
Roni, could I just get you to just mute up very quickly, because I get a bit of feedback from you.
So sorry.
No, it's absolutely fine. Joe, anything to add on that from Mike's point?
The thing that was coming through for me, and it's maybe a little off to the side, was again thinking about the space as that industry, and what it felt like was like the value of communicating what's happening, in space and the new technologies and so on. Like if you think about businesses that do come out with the technology and then they maybe need a company like Rani's to actually, how do we tell normal human beings like this, this is an actual thing? And again, it's to that point of thinking about it as an industry to go, who is the customer? Like, is the customer the end consumer who wants to understand space, or is the customer somebody like a space agency or a space technology company, or somebody at this far side who actually needs a translator, to say this is what this thing does and how it works and how we can get our message out there. So yeah, I think that was just interesting about like where does a company like Rani's potentially sit in relation to those two customer types.
Yeah, some key questions around that as well. And actually, Joe, you're actually leaning in towards answering a question for Nicholas Crisp on the chat, which is any thoughts on selecting or adapting business models for working on or working with traditional space primes, so the big boys, I guess, compared with smaller and more agile new space companies. What do we have to do to flex to work with the big guys versus the little guys?
Well, what I'd say about that one is, again, it's really understanding your customer and their buying cycle and their motive for buying and their risk appetite and all of these things. I remember when we were with RBS and there was a solution that somebody came up with. And it was something like, by implementing this, it'll save you £1 million a year. And RBS were a bit like the cost of implementing that and retraining people, and it's going to be negligible, and it's not going to be worth it then for the disruption, because it's not just like, you can't compare like for like. You've got then it's a system thing, and they have to change and they have to retrain, and so it's just really again understanding that buying cycle and getting closer to them. It'll depend at what point they want to, what's on their agenda, like what's their innovation agenda look like? Do they want to work? Is somebody incentivized to work with smaller organizations? But you have to factor in the whole picture. If you're a 3-person company and you've existed for 5 minutes, but you know what I mean, sorry, that's a little extreme, but somebody might be willing to take that risk, but a space prime is not for something that's going to be truly meaningful.
Yeah.
If you've got some traction in the market, you've got a stable team, you've actually done your due diligence and identified your risk profile, and you flag that and work with them, that's a totally different picture. So I'd be thinking about what's the buying decision? How do we factor into their world and how it works, rather than just a straight, they have this problem and we have this solution, because it's a different type of partnership.
I think that's really interesting for Rani as well, because if you kind of break that down to its real component parts, great scientists, great researchers, great innovators, the most simple thing that they're doing is solving a problem. They're solving a problem. And when you translate that into business, it's solving a customer's problem. So really understanding the problem that you're trying to solve, be it selling into a small company, be it into a large company, if you really nail that problem that you're solving, the pain, and understand where that pain point is, then you've got a better opportunity at creating something or a business model around that's going to solve the customer's needs. So I would probably say that in response as well, Joe, because that's at the basic level. But that goes for you as well, Rani. It really does. So out of the customer segments that you're looking at, who has the problem that you can solve the quickest and also with the most vigor? And that's probably where I would say that's where you start to search for and start to explore the customer to then solve their needs. So in answer to Nicholas, I think get under the skin of the problem, understand the customer needs, whether it's small, whether it's large, and that's when you can really find where you need to flex your business model to really solve the pain. Yeah. Okay. Rani, just come off mute. So thank you.
Yeah, that's really helpful. May I comment?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, thanks. That's really helpful advice, because there are two parts to this. There's as I suppose one would call them the big boys, the space agencies, and then there are the individual customers. So there are two parts to who my customers would be. And with regards to the agency, the space agencies, the big boys, etc., and girls, it would be do they have enough? Just one example off the top of my head: are they engaging with people who wouldn't necessarily apply for certain jobs, and do they need to promote themselves in a certain way? So like Joe said, acting as a kind of a bridge in between the two, I think, is a really, really good idea.
Yeah.
And the other thing is what Mike said about not I need to focus in on one particular area instead of aiming for everybody with regards to the general public on how I want to sell my story to. I think it would be solving the problem, like you said as well, Jeremy. So the problem could be there are people who work in the industry who think, well, I've had a really hard day at work now, how can I relax? And they want to relax with maybe something that's got to do with what they're doing, the technology, but it's in a fictional setting. Or it could be, we need to engage with, get these people to work in our industry. How can we get them interested in it?
Yeah. So there's a whole load of questions there. There's a whole load of that's what these modules are about. They're here to stimulate thoughts. They're here to stimulate questions, and just to get you acting, thinking differently about the next step and overcoming that barrier that you see.
Yeah, it's very helpful. Very helpful.
So, Roni, thank you so much for being part of this. Mike, thank you for lending in your expertise as well. And Joe, same to you. Thanks so much. Some real nuggets of information there, and I hope everybody's got a lot from it. I do want to come into a separate section here, because it's really important that we continue the conversation, because an online forum like this is great, but it's about taking action off the back of today. It's about going out there and putting into practice what you've learned. So join us on our peer-to-peer session, which is on Thursday, where you can hear from other entrepreneurs going through exactly the same problems and trying to force through those barriers that are in front of them. Do scan that code. There is at the bottom of your page where you're watching this as well. If you scroll down, there's a QR code there and the link which you can click on to register for Thursday's session, which is 12 to 1:30 p.m. The other thing I wanted to do is just check in on the outcomes for today, because I hope you have now got an understanding of what we mean when we talk about business models. I hope you've been able to explore those business models that we ran through and see how you can flex and change yours to help with real innovation. And it's important that we get that experiment, that next thing. What do you want to do and do next? And there's a question just come in about what are the great tools, or what are some tools out there to do it? Do you know what? The simplest and most common one is the business model canvas. The business model canvas is so good. It's a strategizer tool. You'll be able to find it on their website. It's also in business model generation generation by Yves Pigneur and Osterwalder. That's a book. Go and find it. Go and have a play with the tool itself, and figure out what you need to do to flex your business model to find what fits you and your customer right now. Don't forget, that's a journey. It changes. Another thing I want to do is just get your feedback. It's really important that we iterate on these as well. This isn't the final version. We want to make these so valuable for everybody as we move forward. We have another 6 of these. So please leave us your feedback by scanning that. But if you're on Slido, we have another way of you giving us some feedback. So please do. There's a poll that's just gone up there. Go and interact with the poll. Leave us some feedback, and we can make these even better than they already are. The conversation doesn't stop there. Please go to our Discord channel. Continue the conversation with like-minded people. Help somebody out as well. Help them to overcome their barriers, whatever they're trying to do in their growth and the generation of their business model. Join our Discord channel. Keep the conversation going, and let's leverage all the expertise that we have on these sessions into that channel and into the sector. So it just leaves me to say thank you so much for being part of today. Make sure you sign up for the Achieving Product Fit product market fit session. Easy for me to say. Next Monday on the 22nd of March at 1 p.m. So please join us then. We look forward to seeing it, but go and take action. And we look forward to hearing what you've been up to. Thanks so much.